At 8:14 a.m., we kick off this morning taking a look at the formation of new political parties ahead of the election. Now, yesterday we learned about the ex-ANC member, the former Secretary General, the Free State Premier, Ismail announcing the formation of his party, and this party is now called the African Congress for Transformation, and he announced his formation and also roping in a number of people. Now, we will all recall that he was expelled from the ANC in June last year, and also at the same time, when one looks at some of the cloud of controversy that surrounds Ace Makashule. Now, we've seen his launch yesterday was accompanied by a handful of supporters in a Soweto, and also where they unveiled the logo showing colors similar to the ANC, green, black, and gold, with sprinklings of the EFF in red. Now, what Makashule said is he would be an alternative to the governing ANC. He accused his former party of abandoning some of his core values and calling on like-minded people, like-minded parties to associate themselves with him. And he talks about the party for the politically abused. Now, that is quite interesting, and this is the reason why we are talking with Professor Sam Koma this morning on the formation of new political parties. Is this a positive step for South Africa? Because we've seen in the past a lot taking place every time ahead of the election. Prof. Sam Koma, good morning to you, sir, and welcome to the show.
Morning, Inayat. Thank you for having me.
Yes, Prof, this seems to be a trend every time ahead of the elections. We see a new political party, and we've seen it in the past. We've seen parties like COPE. We've seen people like Bantu Holomisa breaking away from the ANC. We know what Action SA has done with regard to the DA, the EFF in itself. Now we're talking about Ace Makashule and the ACT.
Yes, you're quite right. So, if you look at the last national elections that took place in 2019, the Electoral Commission, that is the IEC, announced a record number of 48 political parties that contested or registered for the 2019 elections. And you're quite right, this is the pattern that we normally see in the lead up to national elections, in this instance, the forthcoming 2024 national elections. So basically, Inayat, remember, our constitutional democracy is based on the principle and value of election of a democratic government based on multi-party system. So it is already provided in the constitution, and that's the reason we see a number of individuals forming political parties as part of exercising this constitutional right. But we know the reality that elections are very expensive. They require these parties to marshal huge resources as part of galvanizing their support base and also the launching of these political parties, and very important, contesting and making it into the ballot, and of course getting representation in the National Assembly or the provincial legislature. So that is a good sign, of course, that you have individuals that are able to exercise this constitutional right. But as I said, if you look at the last 2019 election, you remember we had a party called Arang South Africa or Arang SA. You also had the APC, for example. They could not make the cut. So it's not given that the party that was launched by Ace Makashule will make it to the National Assembly and the provincial legislatures. Remember also in 2019, we had a party formed by the former executive of SABC, that is Hlaudi Motsoeneng. He could also not make the cut to get representation in the National Assembly. You also had the Black Land First, that is led, and it was formed by Andile Mngxitama. They could also not make the cut in terms of getting representation in the National Assembly. But the good thing is that in the last 2021 local government elections, we had a number of these parties contesting the local government elections. And that is the reason today you have 66 hung councils that are now subject to governance in terms of some form of coalition arrangement. So it's a good thing. If you look at the issue that this individuals are acting within the confines of what we have in the Constitution.
Exactly. And we are in a maturing democracy and they are exercising their democratic right. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But, Prof, the trend seems to be when people are disgruntled, when they are unhappy, when they are dissatisfied, and the solution that they think is, just forming a party. And is it just for the sake of forming a party because you've been disgruntled? Like, for instance, we've seen many that have left the ANC in the past, even people like Julius Malema, I mentioned Bantu Holomisa, all of them, and they are disgruntled, Ace Magashule as well. So I think just looking at the sincerity behind the formation of the political party, is it because you are disgruntled and you still want to occupy a space in the political landscape?
Yes, very good point you're raising, Inayat. That shows political immaturity because these are individuals who don't want to accept outcomes of a democratic process. You remember how COPE was formed, okay? After they lost in the Polokwane conference, which was part of the governing party, they then decided to form COPE. So we can't have individuals who are not sincere in terms of the formation of these parties, but it's more about registering a personal point or to settle a political score with the previous political party that they were party to. So, of course, the electorate can also see through this kind of actions, behavior and conduct of these individuals. And that's the reason most of these political parties, they struggle to sustain themselves and also to make the cut in terms of getting representation either in parliament and also in the provincial legislatures. Yeah.
Yes, and also I suppose, Prof, in many instances, it's about a personality. It's about an individual within these breakaway parties, and we've seen it even with the likes of the EFF. To a large extent, it is about Julius Malema. We've seen with COPE, it's about an individual. We see it in many instances. So it is about this individual. So within these parties, what democratic processes are in place?
Yes, and that's the reason, Inayat, you can see that increasingly we're seeing these political parties running with the idea of forming electoral pacts, okay? Because they can see that this personality issue is no longer selling to ordinary electorate, that you have a party formed by an individual, one or two, and for the party to be successful or sustain its operation is based on this personality. So that is the struggle, that is the challenge, and the problem that most of these political parties are now faced with. I know that AZAPO and the PAC, they are also working on the idea of forming electoral pact. You also have the other 8 political parties that recently also forged a pact as part of looking at the best way to contest the forthcoming national elections that will take place in 2024. So some of these parties, you are quite right, they struggle in terms of creating a culture of internal democracy within the ranks of these political parties. And that's the reason some of these political parties are taking drastic decisions to expel some of these members who dare to raise issues as part of looking at how these political parties are led, governed, and also raising other pertinent issues. So that is the unfortunate part, that these political parties, in the main, they are unable to deal with critical voices and also creating a space for people to independently challenge the decisions that are taken by the party structures.
Yes, and also yesterday was the unveiling of the logo, and we see that many of these logos, obviously, looking at Ace Magashule and his party, very much similar to in terms of the colors to the ANC, a bit of the EFF, but also at the same time, you speak of this political pact, but at the same time, reaching out to even ANC members to join him and calling it a party for the politically abused. Now that I found, quite interesting, Prof.
Yes, that's political immaturity. Okay, why would you form a party for the politically abused? As I said, if you belong to a political party, There are processes in that party. There are structures that are put in place. If you are disgruntled, if you are unhappy about some of the processes, outcomes, you are at liberty to raise, challenge these issues within that particular structure. And this party that has been formed by Ace Magashule, I think they will struggle in terms of eating into the electoral and support base of the ANC because Ace Magashule appears to be a leader that is very popular and entrenched in the Free State. But you can't contest national elections if you are more of a regional party or a regional leader. So he will struggle in terms of resonating with the broader members of the society and also the electorate in terms of getting representation in parliament.
Prof, where does this leave people like myself and yourself, the electorate, the voter? Because, all of this will be playing out. Politicians will be politicians at the end of the day. And it does actually leave us with somewhat of a dilemma as well when we see, all these parties springing up. And as you mentioned, 48 parties. And who knows how many we may end up with comes the 2024 elections.
Yeah, of course, as ordinary people, as potential voters and part of the electorate, of course, it's a menu. It gives us options to look at which political party seem to be genuine, sincere, and also clear around, dealing with issues that pertains to our socio-economic conditions, which is unemployment, poverty, and also inequality, but increasingly issues around crime are also coming into play. So it's up to us as ordinary people and also as voters to look for these aspects that are coming and also being packaged by these political parties, but also looking at the caliber of leadership. Are these leaders that have what it takes to deliver on these priorities, expectations, demands, and also the interest that we have as voters? Are these leaders having the courage, integrity, and vision to take the country forward?
Well, Prof, I like the way you draw the analogy to a menu because sometimes you're in a restaurant and you've obviously ordered something on the menu, but you're always looking at the next person's table and since you wish you had ordered what that person had ordered.
Yes, yeah, that's true. Yeah, thanks, Inayat, for that. Yeah.
Well, Prof, thank you very much for that. And also an absolute pleasure having you as always with us. And we thank you for your time this morning.
Pleasure. Thanks.
Professor Sam Koma was us this morning, just talking about the formation of new political parties against the new party that was unveiled yesterday by Ace Magashule, and a lot is going to still take place and play out from now right until the 2024 election. With that, we're going for a break. We come back, we will do and unpack what has been playing out in Gabon, the elections turning to a coup, and we will be focusing on what is taking place on the African continent.